Hi, it's Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO here in beautiful Montreal, welcoming you to another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. We're part of Fractional Pros Canada, the home for Canada's fractional community, and you can find us on Facebook. We bring you conversations about everything fractional that matters for fractional executives and businesses from coast to coast. Think of this as your go-to spot for real talk, practical wisdom, and strategies you can actually use, all without the corporate fluff and with plenty of Canadian content. Whether you're a fractional pro or a business in our great country of Canada and beyond, this conversation is for you. Grab your espresso and let's dive in. Welcome to the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. I'm your host and fractional CMO, Robert Mendelson, here in beautiful Montreal. Joining us from just down the street in Toronto is Humza Adam. He holds over 15 years of experience in high-value sales and marketing, as well as training, coaching, and mentoring, with experience in diverse industrial sectors from aerospace to telecommunications. Today's episode is sponsored by the fractionalproscanada.ca directory. Scaling a business in Canada is hard enough without the high price tag of a full-time C-suite hire. Most CEOs that I talk to are looking for high-level strategy to break through, but they don't want the overhead, the long-term risk, or the 6-month recruiting cycle. When they ask for a shortcut, I send them over to the fractionalproscanada.ca directory, the curated hub for vetted, high-tier fractional talent like Humza, experts who step in, find the gaps, and deliver ROI from day one. Instead of digging through generic job boards, savvy leaders go where the specialists are already gathered. Business leaders, find your next strategic partner on the directory at fractionalproscanada.ca. Humza, welcome to the Fractional Pros Canada podcast.
It's great to be here.
So I want to start with your background. It's a pretty unique mix. You hold a Master of Science based on the principles of human factors. I'm not sure what that means. You can explain that. And another one in engineering management. And I'm curious how somebody with that technical background, technical foundation, and I guess it's human performance in engineering, ends up on the other end of the spectrum in sales, driving billions in sales revenue for major corporations. How does that all come together?
I'm glad you asked, Robert. So my background is really quite varied, as you say. Initially, my plan was way back when I was a young tyke and thinking about college, university. My initial thinking was I looked up at the sky, and I would see airplanes. I'd be like, "That's what I want to do. I want to be a pilot." Right. And so I ended up deciding to go to flight school in Florida and getting my bachelor's in aviation management and learned to become a pilot. And I actually became an instructor pilot as well and really enjoyed that. And then an opportunity opened up in the School of Aviation where they had opened up a master's degree focusing on human factors. And the focus was aviation safety. And the whole idea was essentially figuring out how and why people make mistakes, particularly pilots, flight crew. Why do they make mistakes? How do they make mistakes? And how can we prevent those? Because when you're up in the air, tens of thousands of feet up in the air, mistakes can be fatal, right? And so that was the idea. And so the human factors element is really understanding how the mind-body connection works, the man-machine interface, and really understanding. It got me into loving how the brain works because I was really absolutely fascinated by things like psychology, neuroscience, and learning how do we store information. How do we remember information at the right time? And what is it that actually drives performance? And I actually published some research looking at some of those questions as well. And then once I finished that degree, I decided that I was thinking about getting an MBA as well. And then I said, well, I have a bit of an engineering/technical mindset. So typical MBA is not where I want to go. Where I really want to go is the Florida Tech had a engineering management program. And I said, that sounds like me, right? And that's where I got into things like quality engineering. I got into things like systems engineering. And I bring that into all the work that I do. But how do I end up getting into the business of sales and marketing? Well, it's a long story, but to cut it short, I ended up meeting up with the vice president of Bombardier at a conference actually in Montreal some time back. And one thing led to another. He was very intrigued by my background, particularly being a pilot and having this technical knowledge and capability. And he said, let's have a discussion. And one thing led to another, and they basically decided we want you as part of the team for North America, part of the sales and marketing team. They flew me down. They relocated me to Toronto, and that's essentially where I'd been since then. This is close to 20 years ago now. So quite a long story. But I was part of the sales and marketing team for North America and was involved in selling and marketing all our product lines of airplanes to airlines here in Canada as well as in the US. And that's how, and each of these airplanes is not in the millions, but in the tens of millions. And we weren't selling one or two, we were selling fleets of these airplanes to airlines. And that's how you get into the billions with the B.
It sounds like when you started at Bombardier, your career really took off.
Yes, literally.
I couldn't resist
literally.
that. Yeah.
Literally.
It's too easy. Okay. So let's land this conversation on something else. I can't help it. That I'm really wondering about. This is just curiosity. What's the biggest plane that you've ever flown?
So the biggest plane I've flown that I've flown like as a pilot.
Yes.
Okay, so the biggest plane I had flown as a pilot was actually it would have been the MD-11, but this is in a simulator. This wasn't an actual airplane. It was actually in a simulator, so that would count. But it's like an actual realistic simulator. We call them a level D simulator that mimics the actual airplane, right? Other than that, the next size larger, like the actual physical airplane that I flew, was a Piper Seminole, and it's a twin engine airplane. And I did a lot of my flight instructing, where I was actually training my students in that type of airplane.
So for somebody who doesn't really know airplanes, how many seats are we talking about? The Piper is what? Is that a 2-seater?
No, it's actually a 4-seater. It's a
4-seater. Okay.
4-seater airplane. Yeah.
And the
Twin engine is a
MD-11?
4-seater. Oh, the MD-11. What's the seat count on that? It would have been somewhere close to 200 seats.
Okay, so pretty big plane, even
Yeah.
though it was flight simulator. And the flight simulators, you say that they're real, except if you happen to crash during the simulation, obviously you don't really crash, so it's not 100% real.
Exactly. It's as close as you can get without getting hurt.
Without getting hurt. All right,
Yeah.
fair enough. All right. So do you ever think about a flight simulator experience for a sales team or for a business? Do you ever wish, or do businesses ever wish, I'm sure they do, that there was a flight simulator that we got this great marketing idea. We got this great sales idea. Let's put it through the simulator and see what happens. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Robert, because actually quite a few years ago, actually after I started my own business, I got involved with a training company, and this is well before we had AI like we have now. And this training company had actually developed some software that I likened actually to a simulator. And the idea behind the software was you had these training modules where the salesperson would actually interact with an avatar on the screen, right?
Hmm.
And you would run through these different scenarios, and you would have to choose the appropriate responses and respond the appropriate way in order to successfully complete the simulation, right? And the whole idea here was giving sales reps the opportunity to role play in different scenarios in front of buyers, right? So that you could get your reps in in a relatively safe environment before you started to take that messaging and that those interactions into the real world where the rubber meets the road. So getting your confidence, nailing your pitch, right? Knowing what to say and how to say, and responding to objections. So it was actually very much a simulator. When I was selling that platform, I would talk about it as a simulator. So I'm really glad you mentioned that, Robert. But actually now with AI, you can actually do it, and that's actually one of the things that as part of my practice, when I look at tools that organizations should bring in, when it comes to AI, there is phenomenal capability to do even much more than what that software had been created to do, right? It can be very interactive, very dynamic, and there's many different ways you can take it. But yeah, there's definitely the opportunity for organizations to do those types of simulations today, especially using AI.
And how good has the AI sales simulator, we'll call it, gotten? And what I'm asking specifically is, we know that when a salesperson is in front of a client or a customer or a prospect, what they say is part of it, but how they say it, as far as the body language, is a big part of it. Is the AI at the point where it's got the camera on you? It's not going to just give you feedback on the talk track, but also your gestures and, your facial expressions and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, there are certain tools that can get into that level. Even the more basic tools will basically capture what you say and give you feedback, and actually will respond in real time based on what you say and how you sound, your tone of voice, and things of that nature. So there's many different levels that you can get into, but it's amazing what capabilities are there, even at the more basic levels.
You're very big on building effective systems, obviously, especially for revenue generation at sales. And you
Yes.
talked about 4 core systems: attracting, converting, retaining, and expanding. And I would guess that most business owners, most fractionals probably as well, end up focusing almost exclusively on converting and not paying enough attention to the other 3, because at the end of the day, every business person wants to get the sale. We want to convert, we want to close the sale, and we
Yes.
get distracted by that compared to concentrating on the other 3. So first of all, am I right? Is that what you see in your experience?
100%. You hit the nail on the head, Robert. Mhm.
All right. So the next question that just begs itself is, what do you do about that?
Okay. So the first thing that needs to flip, like we need to kind of flip the script, and really start looking at sales a little bit differently, right? So the way that I would say the best way to think about it is that you want to think about it as the purpose of a customer is not to get a sale, right? But rather the purpose of a sale is to get a customer. Okay. So
Nice.
let me unpack that a little bit, right? So the idea there is that when you're thinking about sales as something that you do to people rather than within for people, your mentality is more of a transactional mindset, right? Where and when can I get the next sale, right? Who's going to be my next client, right? When you're looking at people and you're trying to see dollar signs, right? And that's absolutely the wrong mindset, right? Rather, when you think about it from the perspective of the purpose of a sale is to get a customer, you're now starting to think a little bit more longer term. You're starting to think in terms of relationships, right? And the first sale is just the beginning of a long-term relationship, right? And that's a much healthier way to be thinking about the sales process, right? And so, as part of that, you have to think about how am I positioning myself as somebody who attracts the right types of clients that I need. And this is where it's important to really understand who's your ICP. ICP being your ideal client profile, right? So whether you're selling into businesses or B2C, you really need to understand your ideal client profile. And if you're selling to businesses, you also need to understand the firmographic aspects as well of who you need to be reaching out to, who you need to be prospecting to. But the attraction system is really about saying, I have a really good understanding of who I'm targeting, what they really care about, and how I can help them solve these types of problems, right? And I have a specific, a unique point of view, and therefore I position myself in a certain way that attracts people who can benefit from the work that I do and can see that I'm different from everybody else in my same marketplace, right? And that's why it becomes attractive, is because you are attracting people on the basis of a deep understanding of what it is, who it is that they are, what it is that they care about, and you're developing that credibility in terms of your ability to help them best solve that problem, right? Better than anybody else can. And they feel that they can trust you to actually help them solve that problem, right? So that is what I mean by having a great attraction system, right? And then conversion system is obviously you've attracted people. How do you actually convert those people into people who are now your customers, who are actually paying you money to help them solve their problems, right? And so you need to have a certain system for that as well, right? I'll pause there if you have any questions before I go on.
No, I mean, I just love the mindset shift that you stated right at the top, which is thinking about a customer not as a dollar amount, not as somebody who's going to pay your next bill, but as somebody who you're starting a long-term relationship with, who yes is going to pay your next bill, and yes is represents dollars, but more than that, represents the opportunity for you to make this customer so happy with what you're providing them with that they're going to go and tell a whole bunch of other people, which are going to bring in even more customers. And that's a great mindset shift, other than just going out to market and saying, where can I get my next sale?
Exactly, 100%, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so the once you have your conversion system, you don't stop there. You obviously want to have a your next system being your expansion system, right? And the idea there is remember, you're building a relationship with this customer as you interact with them. Even between the times that they are ordering things from you, you should be developing that relationship. But once you have that customer, there's huge amount of relationship that there huge amount of value, sorry, that can be unlocked in the relationship, right? Because now you can look at what are some other ways I sold them product X or service Y, right? In what other ways can I help them? What other ways can I support them, given what it is, who they are, and what it is that they're trying to do, right? And when you start thinking about it, you start seeing opportunities to cross-sell, opportunities to upsell, and really create more value in the relationship, right? And if you're not looking at your customers holistically and trying to understand who it is that they are, why they came to you, why did they choose to buy from you versus anybody else, right? Because they had options, right? We all have options, right? Why did they choose to buy from you instead of anybody else, right? So it's understanding that and systematizing that and being able to say, okay, this is how we review our customer list here, and this is how we identify opportunities to be able to grow the relationship with them, and grow the average order value, as an example, and be able to really create far more value from every single relationship, right? And as a marketer, the whole concept of CLV, or customer lifetime value, it's a very, very important concept that unfortunately that a lot of business owners and fractionals don't really seem to understand, right? And if you start having that mindset of how can I expand the value every single customer that I have, right? And you start putting these initiatives in place, such as systematically looking for opportunities to grow the relationship, to cross-sell, to upsell, right? And extend the duration of that lifetime that the customer spends with you, right? You are creating, if you do all of that, you are creating far more value in your business than going after every new prospect, right? Um, and think about the value that you are creating in your business. Your business becomes more valuable. Once you have these types of systems, your business becomes more valuable because you have now been able to create a business where you have a base of customers that um, continue to buy from you, that you have really strong relationships with, and you have systems that you have where you're able to not just revenue systems, but even operational systems, where you're able to consistently deliver the type of experience that they came to you for. And that becomes very, very valuable to whoever is buying that business, right? Because they're not just buying, with a lot of businesses and professional services and many small businesses, um, they don't really have good systems in place, and so the problem is that when somebody's buying or looking to buy that business, they ultimately find that everything resides in the head of the business owner, right? They don't ever have good processes, no good systems. Everything is very ad hoc, and if the business owner were to step away, right, the business would fall apart, literally, right? And so the idea behind systematizing is to really grow your business as an asset that you can ultimately sell, right? And that you can actually even step away from, even if you're not ready to sell, that you can step away from and it doesn't fall apart, right? So that's the idea there. Sorry, I think I got a little bit off track. I was also wanting to mention the last or the fourth system from a revenue generating perspective, which is the replication system. But before we get into that, I'll open it up to you if you have any other questions before I dive right into the replication system.
Well, we were talking a lot about nurturing the customer relationship, the existing customer relationship. I wanted to also talk about nurturing what happens in the pipeline, because very often, especially for a lot of fractionals, you have a feast or famine cycle, right? You're either really busy with clients, you don't have time to build that pipeline, to nurture that pipeline,
Yes.
or you have no clients and you're just focused, or you have one client and you're just
Yes.
focused all your time. So any tips you have for how do you design that? How do you even that out? Design a continuous revenue system that stays running even while you're deep in the weeds of client delivery.
Yeah, it's a great question, Robert. And I see it all the time. So the best way to mitigate this whole feast and famine situation is to basically be dedicating time to doing the sales and marketing and having a systematic way of doing it on a consistent basis, right? So you lock in the time that you need or that is required for doing the business development, for doing the sales activities, for getting the content out, the marketing aspects that need to go out, right? That's consistency is really key, and this is why systems are important, right? Because they help with that consistency, right? So if you have a system that says that every this many times a week we're going to be putting out a blog on, the theme for the month is X, right? So this many times a week we will be putting out a blog on this theme, right? And this many times a week we are going to be conducting or joining or attending these events. We'll do a webinar a month or two webinars a month, right? It's having all of those aspects in place and having it all systematized. It's in the calendar, so that any delivery work that needs to be done is always done outside of that, right? You treat those times as sacred so that it's always being done. It's always happening, right? And then the whole idea of prospecting, really, really important. I teach prospecting. So once you get those leads, how are you staying in front of them? Some of them may not be ready to buy now, right? So you constantly want to be staying in front of them, nurturing those leads. And you need to have a system to nurture those leads, right? So I'll share a little bit of a system that I use that I've found to be really quite effective and quite helpful. So one of the things that I do is when I have a meeting with a prospect, it could be a meeting with a prospect, or it could be a meeting with a center of influence, another potential referral partner. I use essentially the same type of system, right? And how it works is this: is that I'll usually have it might be an in-person or it might be a virtual call. If it's a virtual call, I will have my AI note taker. I use Fathom, right? I'll have my AI note taker on the call, and I have a whole structure for how I carry out that conversation, right? And this is actually a structure that I teach in my trainings, and it's a really effective structure for trying to understand who this person is, what they really care about, what challenges, opportunities that are there, right? And whether this is somebody who is qualified to be either a good referral partner or not, or a good potential customer or not, right? And then based on that determination, I will use the AI tool where I'll basically copy in that transcript into my AI tool, and I will ask my AI tool to do a bit of a debrief on the conversation. And then I will ask my AI tool to help me draft some follow-up emails with this individual based on what we've learned in the conversation, right? And it might be I have somebody who I want to be able to develop a very strong relationship with, or it could be a customer who they say, well, right now I've got a bunch of things going on. I can't take this on right now, but let's talk in like 2 or 3 months, right? So what most people do is they hope they remember in 2 or 3 months, right? And they don't reach out again, and that opportunity essentially dies. What I do in that situation is I basically use AI to help me draft some follow-up types of communication with them, usually in the form of email. So you can get your AI tool to draft up some emails based on the conversation. So it's not just random stuff that you're reaching out with, but it's based on what they mentioned in that conversation. AI can do the research and actually come up with articles that you can send that are aligned with the interests of the person that you were talking to. And so it's not just like checking in, but it's really, I'm providing value, right? And so as part of this system, you can draft up these emails and have them scheduled to go out, let's say, once or twice a month between now and the time when you have that next meeting, right? So now you have these touch points that are essentially automatically getting nurtured, and you don't have to stop and think, hey, did I send Robert an email this month or not? Like, aren't we supposed to be meeting next month? Gee, I really think I should send something to Robert so he kind of has me in mind. So this is a very simple type of system that anybody could use to start helping them in terms of that whole nurturing process, which is really, really important because, again, relationships depend on interactions, right? So what kind of interactions are you having with the people that you're trying to build relationships with? And now with AI, it just becomes so much easier to do a lot of that.
We have around 1,500 fractionals across the Fractional Pros Canada ecosystem. And I speak to many of them. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see fractionals making, whether they're just starting their practice or whether they've been, doing it for a while, same mistake I see very often is the mindset of thinking, how am I going to get my next sale? How am I going to get my next client? Instead of, what system do I need to put into place so that I can get my next client? Because having systems, like you said, just so important. It makes your life so much easier. It's almost like starting your fractional practice from day one with the mindset of exiting in X number of years when you hit X dollars of revenue. And as we know, if you want to sell a business, like you said, you can't be the epicenter of it. You need to have systems so that if you're removed, it keeps running. And having those systems, whether you have an intention of ever exiting or selling your business or not, it's so practical and so valuable because it forces you to think about putting those systems in place, which even if you just stay a one person show for the length, for the duration, it's still going to just make everything run smoother, have more repeatable processes, and overall make you a better fractional and make your life a heck of a lot easier.
100%. I couldn't have said it better.
All right. Thank you. Hey, let's talk about the art and science of high value selling by understanding buyer psychology, right? Very important.
Mhm.
Everybody's got a different mindset. So, for a founder of a company who feels like they're too technical to sell, maybe it's the founder of like you said, maybe it's a highly engineered product like aircraft. Take that as a great example. Somebody starts up a business and they've made the first product design. They know it's great. The market has proven it's great, but they feel like, I'm a technical guy. I don't know how to sell. What's the first psychological shift that they need to make to be able to get there where they're like not only able to sell and they realize they are able to sell, but they're actually able to not just sell, but actually close those high value deals?
Yeah. So the first mindset shift I would recommend here, Robert, is not to think about selling. Okay. Now that sounds a little bit counterintuitive, right? But
Mhm.
if you really think about it, people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. Okay.
Right.
So the important mindset shift there is, how can I help this person buy? I've created something great that the world needs, or that specific types of people in this world need, right? How can I help them solve their problems with this tool, this product, this service that I have to offer, right? So you come at it from the perspective of, I'm trying to help people, I'm trying to serve people, rather than I'm trying to sell people, right? I would say that is the most critical mindset shift, right? It's not really about selling; it's really about helping people buy, right? And if you can make that shift, everything becomes so much easier.
You mentioned virtual clones before, and I want to talk about that a little bit. I've set up my own digital mind, which people can call or interact with in a chat fashion. Have you used that not just for training purposes, but actually for selling purposes?
So there are various tools that allow you to essentially, and there are tools that I help some of my clients implement, where they're actually really sophisticated. And what they do is they basically, like, you give them samples of your basically the emails that you write, your, like, how you respond to certain things, and it basically creates essentially a twin of you, right? And those can be really, really effective, like in terms of really using your time more efficiently, right? So if it learns your style, it can essentially draft emails for you and things of that nature. But more importantly, what I would say is, with some of these AI tools that of the type that I actually help my clients implement, is that the when I talk about the human factor, what I'm talking about is, how do we enable and empower the human being to be more human, right, when they are selling, right? And because that's where the rubber meets the road, is in the human to human interaction, right? The In my view, the AI shouldn't really be replacing you per se, right? It should be helping you get in front of people, right? Once you get in front of people, that should be all you, essentially, right? So what these tools can help you do, and what they should be used to help you do, is do the research, right? They should help you understand your prospect. really, really well, right? And they can, there's an enormous amount of research that these AI tools can do within seconds, right? And so imagine a scenario where you have a whole bunch of prospects. Let's say you have 100 prospects, right? And each of these unique individuals have their own interests, have their own likes, right? What if you had a tool that could go through each and every one of these prospects? It could go through their LinkedIn posts. It could go through their any content where they've been interviewed on YouTube or podcasts, right? Such as the one we're doing right now. It can go through their Twitter, their other social media, right? And it can come up with essentially a profile of each of these people, right? Think about how much better prepared you are going to be when you actually meet with these people, right? Just by looking at the summary of that research, right? And then you could take it a step further, right? And you could actually use some of these tools to basically come up with very specific, tailored messages, right? Saying, hey, for instance, hey, Robert, just heard you having a great interview with Humza about this, right? I really love this point about, you know, the human factor, as an example, right? And then say, curious about your thoughts on this, right? You're engaging, you're starting to try and build that relation, establish a relationship, right? But you didn't have to go through like a million different pieces of information, a million different podcasts, a million different posts to come up with that, right? The AI can basically distill it and serve it up, and basically you can use the AI to basically create custom messaging that you can approve or disapprove, right? Because it's very important to have the human in the loop, right? You don't want to have the AI running amok, right? That's a recipe for trouble, right? Yeah, it goes a million miles an hour, but what's the point of going a millions of miles an hour if you're going in the wrong direction, right? You're just going to get to the wrong place faster, right? So you really want to think about where you're trying to go and what you're trying to do, and use these AI tools appropriately within your system to get the results that you want.
Any favorite AI powered tools that you're using that are just killing it for you, saving you so much time, making you so much more efficient?
Yeah, one I really love using, and I also help my clients implement is Apollo.io. All right, I find that's really, really effective. They've really upped their game in terms of the AI features and capabilities in it. It is super easy to find prospects meeting very detailed criteria that you might have. You can even see things like we call them intent signals, right? So based on searches that people in a particular, let's say you're trying to sell into certain types of companies, right? You can have it actually serve you up who are the companies where people are actually searching for what it is that you offer, right? And it can actually serve you up so that you can now be more targeted with who you're reaching out to, and then identifying the people in those companies that you need to reach out to, and doing a lot of this research, right? And creating those custom messages for you, right? So Apollo.io is a very, very powerful tool. You can use it to create these things we call sequences, which is basically a sequence of messages that you can use when you're trying to reach out to prospects, and make it very tailored, very customized to those prospects. So that would be one of my most favorite tools right now.
All right.
And I'm always exploring new tools. So if you
Always.
have any, let me know. But I'm loving everything that's going on with AI these days.
Well, I mean, the cutting edge right now is forget about what's out there. Just create your own, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
That's where it's at now. So
Yeah.
who knows? The sky's the limit. Let's talk
Mhm.
about referrals. This is the lifeblood of pretty much every business. At some point or another, a business, somebody in sales is going to be looking for a referral. How do you ask for a referral. What is the magic to the right system for asking for referrals from other people that you know, right? We're not talking about asking for referrals from happy customers, although that's certainly part of it, but that's a little bit easier than asking for a referral from somebody who's maybe not a customer. Maybe they're another business contact you have. Maybe there's somebody you met at a networking event who works in the same industry, the same vertical as you do. So they know a lot of people that you would like to talk to. Talk to us about effective ways to ask for referrals.
Yeah. So again, I have a whole system for this. No surprise, Robert. But the way I approach it is essentially so with other, for instance, other fractionals. As you mentioned a lot, Robert, the your best source, if you're a fractional, the best source that you have of referrals is going to be other fractionals, right?
100%.
And so what you want to do is I I start off by starting to get to know the other person. So I will arrange a meeting with them, and I will start to get to know them, and then I have a whole process. So I will identify whether this is somebody who would be what I would consider to be a tier one referral partner, right? And a tier one referral partner is somebody who I've identified who deals with the types of business owners I like to work with, right? And who would have a natural way of being able to make an introduction or referral. Like it's not an out of the way thing for them because they like, for instance, for me, one of the more natural ones would be fractional CFO, right? Because they can see what challenges the company's having from a revenue perspective, from a profitability perspective, that I could come in and help with, right? So it's really important to establish that relationship. So I'll have that first meeting and where I'll get a sense of, is this somebody I would like to be able to deepen the relationship with, right? And then after that first meeting, if I feel like, yeah, this, and I have a whole structure for it, but if I feel like this is somebody who could be a good tier one referral partner for me, then my next step is to offer that we have a sessions where I go through my process and I share who I work with, how I work, and then I ask them to do the same with me, right? So we will have another couple of meetings where we're getting to know each other a little bit better, understand how our business models work, who we love to work with, how we work with them, getting into some details, sharing some success stories, right? Those can be really powerful, right? And then it's a matter of, and then I also have a newsletter that generally that goes out every month. So I will offer to put them on my newsletter, and I ask them to put me on theirs as well. So this is another way to kind of stay top of mind, right? And then if they are going to be in the tier one category, then what I will do is we will set up regular meetings. So we will have like regular, it might be biweekly or it might be monthly meetings. And this way we are just getting to know each other better, getting to know each other more, right? And during those meetings, then the opportunities naturally come up in terms of, hey, I'm working with this person, and I think that they actually might be a really good fit for you. Here's kind of what they seem to be struggling with. Would that be a good introduction, or would that be a good referral for you? Right? So it really greases the skids. It makes it so much more natural, logical, rather than, hey, we've only met each other once or twice, and hey, do you know anybody, Robert, who could use my could use my help? Right? That's not nearly as effective as having a more systematic way of really cultivating and growing the relationships with well identified referral partners, and leveraging that relationship to really gather those referrals.
I want to double click on that newsletter step. I think
Mhm,
it's a brilliant way to keep the contact warm, so to speak,
mhm,
without having
mhm.
to directly engage with them. What kind of content do you put in that kind of a newsletter?
Yeah, so some of the best kind of content is really so a lot of people try and make it a bit too professional, right? Where it's all about, here's what we do, and oh, we're launching this new service, or we're doing this, or we're opening new office here, opening new office there, right? And it starts to feel a bit too corporate, right? What I like to do with my newsletter is really share a little bit about my personality, right? So it doesn't have to be always focused on the work that I do. There's usually some link, right? But I want people to get to know me. What am I working on? What's something that may have happened today that made me think about something a little bit differently, right? That might help you think about things differently as well, right? So it's really about sharing a little bit about myself so that people are starting to feel like they are getting to know me, right? They're getting, even between those monthly meetings, for instance, right? And hopefully they're starting to look forward to the next thing I'm going to be talking about, right? And they find it helpful. Ideally, they find it helpful. They're getting nuggets that they can actually use and apply, right? Uh, and I've had people tell me that they've shared my newsletter with other people, and other people who might even be good prospects for me, right? So that's really what you want to have happening with your newsletter is don't make it an overly corporate, all about this is how great I am, this is how amazing we are, this is all the great stuff we're doing, right? Show some personality and really be thinking about your audience and what can I share in here that people will benefit from, right? And they can take away and they can apply and they can do something with, right? Because that's going to come back to me, right? Because they're going to be like, wow, Humza shared a really great tip. I used it and it made a big difference, right? And they're going to be looking for the next one, the next one, next one, right? And they're obviously going to be looking to share it with others as well, because it's, the thing to think about referrals is that, people oftentimes when they're referring, they're not just referring for you, right? They're referring for themselves, right? What I mean by that is that if somebody introduces you to somebody else, right, or introduces that somebody else to you, right, it's largely because they want to um, they, they want to feel like they've helped this person, right? So while it helps you as well because you get some business out of it, they are doing it for them because they want to build that relationship with that person, or they want to help that person in a particular way, right? And so you have to think about that as well. And so with your newsletter, you can kind of have that effect as well, where people are actually feeling like, wow, this is so helpful. This is amazing insight. I want to share it with so and so and so and so, right? And they're doing it for themselves, not necessarily for you, because they're like, wow, Joe has really been thinking about me. He shared me this great article from this person. I don't know who they are, but he shared me this really great article, right? And so you have to keep that in mind as well as you are building your referral system and as you are doing things like newsletters.
Have you tracked metrics around things like how many first conversations you need to have with other fractionals or whoever your target prospect audience is, your referral audience is, before you start to get to identify who would be, as you term them, a tier one referral partner, and then how much time it takes until they actually start to refer you? Have you tracked any of that?
I haven't officially tracked it, but that's actually the direction I am planning to go. But what I can tell you is that usually after the first conversation, by the end of the first conversation, I know this is somebody who I would consider a tier one potential referral partner, right? And usually the end of my conversation always has the next step, right? And if it's a tier one referral partner, I will always propose that let's get to know each other a little bit better. Sometimes it might be if we're in the same city, let's break bread together, let's get together, even for a coffee or something. Let's get to know each other a little bit better, right? But usually there is that whole sequence that comes into play where it's like, I want to get to know you better. I want to get to know what it is you do, who it is you do it for in more detail, and I want to share the same about myself, right? And with referrals, it can be a little bit sporadic in terms of how long it takes with different personalities, because everybody has their own feeling of, at what point do I feel comfortable? At what point do I feel comfortable referring somebody to, say, Robert, right? Some people are a little bit more skittish about it, and you need to have more interactions because it's about trust, right? I know you had Bill Cates on a few weeks ago, and he talks about borrowed trust, right? And I totally agree with that, right? So, I think it would be interesting to see what numbers come out of that. But at the end of the day, it's important just to keep doing it, right? And tracking is important, but more important than the tracking is the execution.
Yeah, the trust factor is really interesting. I remember that Bill shared the story that, you go way back in time before the age of really any kind of communications technology. I guess we're talking, go back really far, like 1600s, 1700s, 1500s, where somebody would show up in a new town in the next village, and they would have a letter of referral to present to another business there,
Yes.
with that business saying it was kind of like a sharing a testimonial, right? And
Yeah.
that's the ultimate example of what Bill referred to as a transfer of trust. And transfer of trust today is still a foundational element of a referral. When I refer you, it means that I am giving you the stamp of approval that I trust you enough that you're a solid, reputable person who can do a good job, that I think it would be valuable for this next person to meet you. And I love that, tying it back to all the way back in time, that asking for referrals is nothing new. And just the way it's being done now with technology makes it a little bit different, but the principles are exactly the same. They've stood the test of time.
Yeah, and what I like to say is that humans haven't really changed in the past couple 100,000 years. We're essentially the same, right? What has changed is obviously our environment and technology, right? But at the fundamental level, we're no different than we were, a couple 100,000 years ago, right? And this whole concept of trust and being human, right? I would say is now more important than it ever was, right? Because especially with technology, where people are trying to use technology in different ways, they can get carried away with it a bit too far, right? And start to lose what it is that actually makes them human, right? And that's why I'm glad that when I decided to start my own business, I called it the H factor, largely for the human factor, right? Because I think that is where the rubber meets the road, and it's always going to be where the rubber meets the road. No matter what happens with AI or any other technology, the rubber is always going to meet the road with the human-to-human interaction.
The tools don't change. Sorry, the tools change. The people don't. That's
That's right.
that's what it is. By the way,
That's
as
right.
far as the numbers, I just wanted to share with you what I've seen from my experience in the fractional world. Is it takes about 200, call them coffee conversations or whatever you want to call it as your first meeting, about 200 first meetings to eventually get down to 7 or 8 what you call tier one referral partners, what I call A referral partners. And the idea is that when you get to that level, those 7 or 8 referral partners, if they refer you on average one lead a quarter, right? It gives you around 30 per year. The close rate on those, hopefully somewhere in the 15 to 20% range. That translates into 3 or 4 full-time, clients. And for the typical fractional, that's a full play. You got 3, 4 clients, and you're busy. You're good.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
Mhm.
the numbers that I've seen. As far as how long it takes to get there, I couldn't really tell you. It's probably a good 6 months, maybe more.
Yes. Hmm.
But it's all that to say, it's a process, and there's work that is required to do it, and time and effort. It's not easy, but it's a
Yeah.
worthy endeavor.
Exactly. Exactly. right? It's it's like any of those things that's truly worth doing, right? What you get out depends on what you put in, right?
Yeah, 100%. What goes around comes around.
There you go.
Hamza, let's
Mhm.
wrap it up. If you could put a message on a billboard that millions of fractionals and business leaders drive by every single day on the highway of life and read it and get inspired, what would you be putting on that billboard?
I would say systematize or perish, right? Uh,
Systematize or perish.
yes, I know it's a little bit stark, but it will grab somebody's attention on the highway for sure, right? Um, the reason I think it's so important that I would put it in those words is because things are changing so fast, and if you're not making your tools, your technology, your people, if you're not putting to get them together in very effective and efficient systems, know that your competitors are, right? Nobody's standing still, right? So if you don't, your competitors will, and they will they will eat your lunch, right? So that would be my message. Is take growing your business seriously, and one of the best ways that you can grow your business is to systematize it in the right way.
Don't get left behind.
That's right.
Systematize or perish.
There you go. I love that addition.
All right, Hamza, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with us today here on the Fractional Pros Canada podcast.
My pleasure. It has been a total blast. Thank you so much for the invitation, Robert.
You got it. Cheers.
All right.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. If you're a fractional professional based in Canada, we'd love to have you join us in the Fractional Pros Canada Facebook group, the home for Canada's fractional community. It's where Canadian fractional executives connect, share insights, and help each other succeed. Until next time, I'm Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO. May your impact be full-time, even if your hours are fractional.